Hey everybody, Kris from the Brothers Take here, and I just wanted to do another video on Gotham Knights, sort of a follow-up to the last one I did, in which I gave my thoughts on which of the Batman villains in the Arkham series, all the villains who appeared in the Arkham series, should get a reinterpretation in the Gotham Knights universe, should be retouched or relooked upon, and which ones I don't think we need. So I just wanted to do a follow-up on Batman villains who had not yet been in a video game, or certainly not in the Arkham series, that I would love to see in Gotham Knights. Now, this isn't like a prediction thing. This isn't like, oh, I bet you these villains are going to be in here, or these villains are definitely going to be in here. There's no sources here or anything like that. But it's just from a hardcore Batman fan and someone who is really, really excited for Gotham Knights and who wants to do more content on Gotham Knights. Just my thoughts on 6 Batman villains that I would love to see in this universe. So up first is Prometheus. The thing I really like about Prometheus is, of course, the mirror he is to Batman. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know Prometheus, he's sort of like a dark version of Batman where he saw his parents get killed as a child, but by the police, and he's kind of waging a war on justice rather than a war on crime. So I think not only is he incredibly interesting, but he's also like one of the best martial artists in the DC universe. And he scans and studies his opponents to learn all their moves and use them against them. So I think from a video game perspective, he could make a great opponent and a great boss fight. And he's also just such an interesting, dark version of what these vigilantes could become if they went down a more violent road. So he works perfectly. Obviously, he's a great mirror to Batman, but he also mirrors the vigilantes as well, in terms of being the opposite side of the spectrum. Another villain I would love to see in here is Lockup. So Lockup is a villain. He did show up in the Batman animated series. People probably know him from that, and he was also a big part of the Batman No Man's Land story. But basically, he was like a cop or a security guard, depending on what version you go with. And he likes to go around, collect criminals, and lock them up himself. So he's essentially a vigilante of his own kind, but he's brutal with the criminals, very violent, and detains people for all sorts of crimes. But I think in this version where Batman is gone in Gotham Knights, so there's no Batman around, and his sidekicks are obviously trying to bring order back to Gotham. But it might create a vacuum for other people who maybe feel like they want to take crime into their own hands. So it'd be great to do a character like Lockup where, as far as he's concerned, he's doing the right thing. He's taking on the crime at Gotham. But maybe he's like taking in very petty criminals and he's treating them with absolutely no remorse, or he's built his own private basement or his own, private prison that he's locking people up in. I would see him as a side mission, not as like a main story, but I think it'd be a really interesting villain to throw into this game. Next up is Maxi Zeus. This is always an interesting character to me in that he's kind of wacky and kind of weird in a lot of the comics. And even in like the Batman animated series, he was kind of wacky and weird, but he was also handled with a lot of interest. And I think if you could do a dark take on this character or an interesting spin on this character, then I'd love to see it. And also, if he used like electricity-based weaponry, he could make a great boss fight as well. But just having him as this like mob boss in Gotham who has a particular interest in, Greek mythology, Greek architecture, I think it'd make for a great, interesting villain. But also his like base of operations or his the locations. If they had that Greek architecture, it would add something else to the scenery in Gotham. So like that could add, new locations to go and visit and change up the scenery a little bit in his district. The next villain I would love to see, which is probably one of the least likely ones to see, even though I think he would fit into the story incredibly well, is James Gordon Jr. So this would be Barbara Gordon's brother, and he's actually a serial killer. So he doesn't go by any kind of costumed name or anything like that. He doesn't have like gimmicks or anything, but he is a serial killer. And with his father gone in this particular version of the universe, I think it would be great for Barbara as a personal story, trying to deal with her own brother, who maybe desperately needs help, but is obviously going down this incredibly dark road, taking people's lives and becoming incredibly dangerous. And I think this could create a lot of emotional weight for Barbara. So, of all the villains I've named so far, he fits into the story better in that he's directly related to one of the playable characters. And maybe even he knows something about what happened to their father, or, there's plenty of ways he could feed into the story. However, he is kind of lesser known in the grand pop culture, and I don't know if he'd be given a space in here. Maybe a DLC or something. But I would love to see. I mean, if they did this character, I would be so excited to see an interpretation of this character in this game. Next up is the Ventriloquist. Now, I know Scarface, his kind of accomplice or main counterpart, was in the Arkham games, but the Ventriloquist himself, other than the bio, where some of these characters had bios before, other than his bio, he was actually not in the Arkham games at all. And I did kind of mention that when talking about Scarface in the last video, that I'd be interested to see Scarface again, but mainly I want to see the Ventriloquist actually. So I would love to see this character in here. He's actually one of the more interesting characters as well from the Batman animated series. Well worth watching the episodes with him in it, and Mark Hamill did the voice of Scarface in that as well. But just the dynamic between him and Scarface, and the fact that the Ventriloquist himself seems so innocent and so fragile, and yet it's really his mind that's actually planning all these horrific crimes and stuff. He's just such a fascinating character, and I think that he could make for another great crime boss here in Gotham, especially they said that there's different districts or different boroughs. And if, say Black Mask runs one borough and the Penguin runs another borough, Scarface with the Ventriloquist could be another one. So I would really love to see this character in here. And then the other Batman villain that I would love to see in Gotham Knights, who has not yet been in, he wasn't in the Arkham games or anything, is KG Beast. I did mention that before in the last video, that instead of doing Deadshot, it'd be maybe better, more interested to do KG Beast. He's an interesting assassin. He's gone up against the Bat family before. He's not necessarily, a very personal Batman villain per se. He's a Batman villain, but it's not like his rivalry with Batman is so key that without Batman, he shouldn't be in here. He actually does go up against the other Bat family characters in their own comic books, and he has gone after other DC characters too. And he's just incredibly violent, and he's got lots of weapons and lots of attachments and stuff. You could do the version where he's missing a hand and he's got weapons that he attaches onto his arm and stuff. But he could just make for a really interesting boss fight as well, where it's not like a sniper fight. He's more full on than that. Something between Bane and Deadshot, where he's using artillery, but he's also a bit of a tank. You know what I mean? I think he could make for a great boss fight in here. And those are just 6 Batman villains that I would love to see in Gotham Knights. I mean, obviously, you could keep going forever and pull all sorts of Batman villains out. But those are the 6 that came to my mind. And I didn't try to limit at 6. I was just which Batman villains that haven't yet been put in, say, the Arkham games would I like to see in Gotham Knights? And these were the 6 that came to mind. But I'd be open to see plenty of others as well, if they surprise us with cool interpretations of them. And I'd love to hear from you guys, so please do let us know down in the comments what you think they should do with maybe some of these villains if they had them, but also what other Batman villains that have not been in the Arkham games, that are just in the wider comic books, would you love to see in Gotham Knights making an appearance, much like the Court of Owls making their first video game appearance in here. Which villains would you like to see? And guys, if you enjoyed this, please do give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe for future content, not only our podcast, but I do hope to do more Gotham Knights videos as well. So if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in this particular sphere, make sure you're subscribed and click that notification bell so you know when those future ones come out. Thank you very much for checking this out. We'll be back to talk to you guys next time.